Good evening, YouTube. You guys are now watching another segment of the Cali Effect, presented to you by SlimX Team Symmetry. Today we're going to be going over part 2 of how to identify monster effects. I think this is going to be a really good guide for people that play on Dueling Network, or just people that really want to get into the game and learn basically every aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! We're going to be going, using Mermeld as a guide, mainly because Mermeld's the way the deck operates, you need to know all the type of effects, mainly just to go into the bigger plays, how to make your opponent not be able to activate bottomless when you're summoning monsters to gun. It's just so many things. It's one of those skill decks that people underappreciate just because of its mechanics in the game. If you guys would like to see part 1, which I really urge you guys to do, there will be a link in the description or somewhere up there. There'll be somewhere to get part 1. It's going to go over flip effects, ignition effects, and trigger effects, optional trigger effects, how to miss timing, and all that other stuff that you guys would genuinely really need to know. Today we're going to be going over condition effects, continuous effects, and quick effects. Now, there are two main types of condition effects. Condition effects are not considered to be effect, which cannot be negated by cards like Skill Drain, and effects without classification. Okay, now we're going to stop right there. Now, condition effects are cards like, let's take Mermeld Abyss Lind and Mermeld Abyss Gun. Now, we went over both of these effects in the last video, and we classified them as trigger effects. Now, if you look closer at the card text, they both say you can only use the effect of such and such once per turn. That is a condition effect. In no way, shape, or form this effect can be negated. Now, like I said in the last video, there's going to be something saying, no, Cali Effect, you're wrong. Prime example, level modulation. Level modulation tells you to special summon a level monster ignoring the summoning conditions, which would be a condition. So, with that being said, one of the only cards that just ignore what I say. These type of conditions, like Mermeld Abyss Lind and Mermeld Abyss Gun, like I said, cannot be negated, cannot be stopped. Once you do the card effect and it says you can or you can't do this or whatever, you cannot do it again. Prime example, Malefic Stardust Dragon is face up on your field. Even if Skill Drain is face up on your field, you cannot summon a Malefic monster again, mainly because it is a condition and not an effect. The second part of condition effects, I'm going to give you a clear example of another type of condition. These monsters have no classification of a real type of effect. For example, Evil Swarm Caster and Constellar Pullix. These cards are labeled under a continuous-like, condition-like effect, and their effect applies when they're summoned, but it's a continuous effect, so it doesn't really have an effect. So let's clarify over those real quick. When Constellar Pullix or Evil Swarm Caster are summoned successfully, their effect is applied, no matter what happens to them during that turn. And that, which you guys would like to call a condition effect as well as continuous effect, just an effect that has no classification, also known as those type of condition effects. The effect to gain an extra normal summon, as long as the monster fulfilled its purpose of being summoned, then it's perfectly fine. Another thing I want to talk to you guys about with condition effects is if the card activation is negated, then you may activate the same condition effect again. For example, if Onslaught of the Fire Kings is activated and the opponent activates Solemn Warning, if you guys read on the card text of Solemn Warning negates the activation and destroys the card. Now, when the card effect is negated, when the card activation is negated, it is treated as it never happened. Same thing goes for monsters that Solemn negates or other cards. When that card successfully negates the activation, negates the summon, it's treated as it never happened. That being said, you can activate the card again because it never happened. Pretty simple. If my Abyss Gun is negated by Solemn Warning, then I will be able to discard Abyss Gun and activate her effect again because her effect was never used in the first place. You guys have to pay close attention because it says negate the activation, not negate the card effect, not blah blah blah. It has to say negate the activation. Excuse me. Next, what we're going to be talking about is continuous effects. Now, there are no continuous effects in this Mermeld deck, so we're just going to go right to the extra deck, and we're going to use Mermeld Abyss Gaios. Continuous effects are a type of monster effect that is activated as long as the monster is face up on the field. Some continuous monster effects only have an effect when specific requirements are met, rather than being applied as long as the monster is face up on the field. For example, Bountiful Optimus, which sounds, if you guys think about it, it sounds like a trigger effect, but it's a continuous effect. You guys have to really watch how cards are worded. Getting back to the original statement, continuous effects are active as long as the card remains face up on the field. Let's read how Mermo Abyss Gaios is worded. It says, while this card has XC material, level 5 or higher monsters cannot attack. That first part is the continuous effect. Not only does it have to remain face up on the field, it still has to have material for its effect to be active. Now, one important thing I want to tell you guys about continuous effects. Continuous effects do not activate, so they cannot be negated with such cards like Divine Wrath or stuff like, you know, cards that negate the activation. Since they're already active, they don't have an activation window, they don't have a negation window. Continuous effects cannot start a chain. That's just how they are. And now that I think about it, I think Bountiful Optimus effect actually states immediately draw one card after you activate it, which kind of makes sense because it doesn't really provide an activation window. You can realize how continuous effects cards are because it'll say as long as this card remains face up on the field, or it'll just have one simple text, this and this cannot be activated, period. And that's how you know. It doesn't have a when or if or such and such and blah blah blah. It doesn't require you to do anything. It's just permanent on the card effect. The last thing we're going to talk about, actually I should have never moved Mermo Abyss Gaios, is quick effects. Now, quick effects are a type of monsters effect that are spell speed 2. And these are the only monsters that are spell speed 2. They can be activated in the summon negation window and can be chained to another activation. Monsters that negate activations or summons are all quick effects. So cards like Six Samurai Shiin is a quick effect because it negates cards in the activation window. Now, let's get this back to business though. Quick effects are the only thing that can be activated in Chain Link 2. And for you guys, we'll just talk about Chain Links while we're here. All of the monster effects that I've stated, for the exception of continuous effects because they do not activate it, are considered Chain Link 1. The only one that can be considered Chain Link 2 are trigger effects, because how trigger effects work, they just activate when the condition are met. So other than that, those are trigger effects can be Chain Link 2 as long as it just doesn't miss timing. Gaios, cards like Gaios, Six Samurai Shiin, and a host of other cards are quick effects because they can be activated when you want to as Chain Link 2, and they can be activated in the summon negation window, even if they don't have an effect to negate summons. So with that being said, let's talk about Chain Links, one of the most confusing things in this game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, so let's take, where's Mermo Abyss Megalo? Let's take Mermo Abyss Megalo to represent all of the monsters that are spell speed 1. Mermo Abyss Megalo is going to represent everything that is not a quick effect. Okay, Gaios is going to represent spell speed 2 monsters, which are quick effects. Okay, so Mermo is going to the ignition effects, the flip effects, the continuous effects, all that other stuff. Mermo Abyss Megalo is going to represent. Gaios is going to represent quick effects in itself. Dark Hole is going to represent any card, any spell card that is not quick play. Period. Rituals, continuous, field, any spell card that is not quick play. Mystical Space Typhoon is going to represent quick play spell cards as it is. The only spell speed 2 spell card. This Abyss Squall is going to represent trap cards because all trap cards are spell speed 2. And Solemn Warning is going to represent Solemn Warning because all continuous trap cards, or I'm sorry, all counter trap cards are spell speed 3. Let's get down to business. Now, every single trap card that is not a counter trap card is considered spell speed 2. You can activate them on your opponent's turn, you can activate them on your turn, you can activate them just about any given time. All quick play spell cards are considered spell speed 2. If they have that little lightning symbol on them, they're spell speed 2. All non-lightning symbol spell cards are spell speed 1. Okay? Mermo Abyss Gaios is a quick effect. That quick effect is considered to be spell speed 2. You can activate it at any given time. And got Mermelibus Megalo representing all of the monster effects, whether it's trigger, ignition, continuous, are all considered spell speed 1. Even trigger effects, they are considered spell speed 1, but they activate at any given time. They could form a chain link, but just to make things more simple, let's just consider it spell speed 1 right now. So, okay. This is hard to explain. Normal monsters, ignition effects, all that other stuff. Spell cards that are quick play. These cards cannot activate and form a chain together. Okay, so I can't activate the effect of Mermelibus Megalo and then chain Dark Hole because they're both spell speed 1. You cannot activate a spell speed 1 card in response to another spell speed 1 card. Okay, these are at the lowest tier. Okay, now spell speed 2 cards. Not only can you use them to start off a chain, you can activate them in response to spell speed 1 cards, okay? So if my opponent activated Mermelibus Megalo's effect, a special summon, when he summons himself, I can chain Mermelibus Gaio. Actually, I can chain it when Mermelibus Megalo activates his effect. But I can chain Gaios' effect to detach, to negate all of my opponent's monsters that are lowered in attack. Once again, these cards can be chained to each other. So if my opponent activates Typhoon, I can chain Abyss Squall. These cards can be chained to each other, and these cards can be chained to the spell speed 1 card effects. Last is Solemn Warning. Counter trap cards are considered spell speed 3. There is no card that can be activated in response to a counter trap card, which as you can see is the arrow, except for a counter trap card. Not even spell speed 2 cards can activate in response to Solemn. So if my opponent summons a monster, I go Solemn, the opponent can activate Mermelibus Gaios, Mystical Space Typhoon, or any of the other card respects in response, because spell speed 3 is the highest. As you can see, I mapped it out almost like a tier system. Spell speed 1, spell speed 2, spell speed 3. And that's exactly how it works. If you guys use these cards accordingly, you will never meet a problem on Dueling Network again. Thank you guys for watching another segment of The Cali Effect. Please like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, enjoy.